not everything passed down from our ancestors is wisdom, right? Yes, ancestral guidance is powerful, but what if some of what we've labeled as truth, right, or this, um, wisdom just because it's coming from our ancestors is actually unhealed emotional baggage, or traumas or limitations or programming or conditioning that's been passed down through generations that we are embracing, tapping into, calling truth, and then living that out. Right. So in this video, I want to talk about the difference between ancestral guidance that's rooted in elevation and inherited conditioning. All right, and how to know when it's time to release rather than when repeat. All right, so hey, welcome back to Soul Aligned Living. I am Dr. Toya Davis, a spiritual teacher, ancestral lineage healer, Akashic Record master, and author of 2 new books, Path to the Ancestors, which really help to kind of frame the narrative around the direction that I would like to take conversations in as it relates to our work and our connection with ancestors. All right. I have worked with and guided many people, and where I have arrived at today with my understanding and processing of ancestral information and wisdom comes from years of my own personal work, right? Years of initiations and trainings and studies, and I've guided many people through the process of discerning what is serving their healing and what's keeping them bound to outdated patterns. And this distinction is really at the heart of what's today, of the discussion that we're going to have today, right? Sometimes it is really challenging to come up and start to look at beliefs and notions and things that we have continued to perpetuate out of habit, out of understanding, out of larger societal agreement, right, that are not actually serving us. And my goal is always to help us get to the most authentic and powerful version of yourself. And sometimes that requires the uncomfortable conversations of where am I upholding truths, and the upholding truths with my air quotes, right, that are not actually true. All right. So we are going to be looking at the difference between constructive ancestral guidance and inherited generational programming or baggage, so that you can choose what you want to carry forward with you. All right. So what's important here to understand first is that, like in many cultures, so if you're new to my channel, or if you're new to me, a part of my background is I got into this work, right? Coming through a very particular lens. And by this work, I mean, even coming into understanding that ancestors were a thing, right? In my growing up and in my kind of day-to-day existence through childhood, teen years, right? Early years in college, I don't know if I ever heard the word ancestors, or maybe if I did, I don't quite know that I knew what it meant, right? I grew up with the belief, someone dies and they go to heaven, they go to hell, but that they were there, right? They were there. We continued to know them. We had the pictures up. We had the book with the obituaries, right? We had all of the things. So I knew it in that sense, but this idea of terming it or giving it a name of ancestors and really understanding what that meant, or even that they could, provide guidance and information and all that stuff. Like, it just wasn't a frame of reference for me. Okay. And so it wasn't until I transitioned into moving into African traditional spirituality. So, originally through kind of the Lukumi system, where this idea of ancestors even surfaced as a topic, right? And in this space, ancestors are presented as we venerate them, right? And by veneration, I simply mean we give acknowledgement to, we pay homage to, we recognize and give thanks for their energy and for them being here. And in us recognizing them, we take on this idea that because they are not here anymore in this kind of physical form, that they now have amassed this divine knowledge that should be followed and is going to move me forward, and I should seek their wisdom and I should seek their guidance, right? So I'm going somewhere. So this is the trajectory, right, of my understanding. And so going to do that work of starting to understand relation with ancestors and who they are and how they are and their role in my life and all of that was a journey. And I went through many, many iterations of what that looked and felt like until I landed at the place that felt right for me. And my goal in this conversation isn't really about what your journey is and how you relate and connect with your ancestors, and more just, again, about bringing into your mind's awareness that sometimes the information and the ways that we are receiving the guidance is not truly in alignment with what is in your best and highest good. All right. Yes, I'll leave it at that. All right. So I want to just frame this first by saying that our ancestors were human. Right? They walked, they lived, they talked, they had whole existences and lives, and they were beautiful and wise and loving, and they also had wounds which shaped their survival, right? Which created fear, which some of was also created by cultural limitations, right? Societal expectations, societal norms. All of those things are happening. And sometimes what we are receiving is information that is coming from the lens of that latter. And sometimes it's absolutely coming from the lens of the first, right? But it's important to understand that two things can happen, that two things can be simultaneously kind of happening, right? We can have the energy of our ancestors who absolutely love us and care for us and, want the best for us, and that wanting the best for us be wrapped in limitation, right? So when we are in the space of going to receive ancestral guidance and ancestral information, I want you to ask yourself, what I'm receiving, does this invite expansion or fear? Right? One is opening, right? One is allows for growth. The other one brings in constriction, brings in constriction. Okay. So does this invite expansion? Or let's say, does this invite expansion or does this invite restriction? Okay. Does it align with who I am becoming or who I was told I had to be? And then the last question that I want you to ask is, does it support liberation or does it reinforce a cycle that I have been looped into? Okay. So what we're doing with these questions is discerning when you're receiving this guidance, is this wrapped in, when you're receiving these impulses, is this divine guidance or is this conditioning? Okay. Guidance is always going to feel aligned, empowering, and connected to your highest good. It's not going to be fear-based or forceful. So I'm going to give you an example. A client one time shared with me a message that perpetuated, so a client came and said that they were working with their ancestors and they received a message around the situation that was happening, and that the information or the guidance or the directions The directions that came through was for them to basically remain silent, right? Remain silent and, do as they were told, right? That they needed to be respectful in this situation because this was an opportunity that was really, really big for them. And that, if they just basically do what they were told, right, nothing would happen to them, right? There would be no backlash to them as the person. And so just essentially go in, put your head down, do your work, right? Put your head down, do your work, right? The reality, though, is that information that was being shared is not in alignment for my client's best and highest good, right? The information that was being shared from a space of, in our time, in this lineage, in our bloodline, the way that we have been able to get to this point that we are at, which is by all means thriving, happy, jobs, whatever, has been to put our head down, not cause a scene, not make trouble, don't be a disturbance, right? And we get to the next thing, right? This is only a temporary stop. Don't cause no trouble. You'll get to the next thing. Put your head down. Now, I'm not saying that the flip side of this was that the person needed to go in there and make a ruckus and cause a scene and do all of those things, right? But understanding that the way this information was coming is rooted in survival, right? That this ancestor, that this lineage has rooted in the way, allows us to then have a different conversation, allows us to then ask different questions, allows us to investigate, not just take this surface layer of information and say, this is the gospel, now I must move forward and go out with this information, right? But it allows us to say, why is this the guidance? Does this guidance actually serve me? Right? Does this guidance for me bring expansion or bring restriction? That absolutely brings restriction. Does this align with who I'm becoming or who I was told I had to be? Right? The work that me and this client are doing together is about her getting to the best and highest version of her life, where there is joy, ease, and abundance. Putting my head down and being in the situation where I have to be afraid of, is something going to turn back on me or happen to me, is not creating a life of joy, ease, and abundance, right? And it definitely ain't happening with ease and grace. So this particular guidance does not align with who this person was becoming. It is in alignment with how she was conditioned and raised to be, because again, that is the energy that flows through her particular ancestral lineage, right? And then last, does it support liberation? Or does it reinforce a pattern? Right? So if we look at those questions as it relates to information, then I absolutely know, this client absolutely knows, this information is coming through from the standpoint of ancestral baggage versus true and authentic guidance and wisdom that is in alignment for my growth. Okay? So we were able to take that and then move it a step further, and then actually work to release and heal or dismantle that energetic imprint that's in her lineage that says we just have to put our head down, not be seen, so that we can get to the next thing, right? Because the beautiful thing about understanding the energies and the patterns and the guidance that's coming through is that when you stand into the power of knowing that you are a co-creator in this experience and you get to bring everybody along the journey with you for greatness and growth, then you can say, wait, this isn't an experience that I want my future, the other people in my lineage to experience, right? This isn't something that I want to keep combating and kind of going through. I want to work to dismantle this energy. I want to bring elevation to this energy. And so then we can do that. But you have to come into awareness that or acceptance of the fact that not all information that comes through is the absolute gospel truth. And you just because they said it, and now I'm going to do this thing, right? One of the things that I really lean into and why this work is important to me is because I think for so long I have run into people who use this, well, the ancestor said, and so now I'm going to do this. And I'm like, but that's completely counter to the life that you are creating. Like, I don't understand why you would do that, right? And it's because we've been taught that when information comes through these various channels that it is gospel, and I'm offering that it's not, right? Although it may be rooted in something that if you have the tools, the information, the knowledge to be able to go deeper, you can move past that top layer of information to actually get to the root of it so that you can still get to the thing that you want, right? Okay, that's that. I was about to go down a different path, trying to stay focused. I think the other thing that I just want to bring a little bit of light for here is that ancestral guidance is meant to help you move forward in life. Okay? And I'm trying to be really careful because I teach whole classes around ancestors and the energy and how we work with them, how we heal, how we connect, how we elevate, how we venerate, right? That brings us into alignment with us getting to the best and highest version of ourselves versus perpetuating cycles. And so there's a lot of like context and background that we kind of build up to. And so I'm trying to make sure that I am being as I have this thing where I never want to give people like bits, like a part of the information that can create a loophole later, right? Or that can create problems later. So it's like framing enough of the information so that you have it in a enough of a bite that you can move forward in wholeness. And so that's just kind of where I'm going through in my mind right now. But on that note, I do have a workshop coming up May, I think it's May 5th. Hold on, let me see. It's a weekday. It's a reschedule of a workshop that I was supposed to do last weekend, but I was so sick. It's May 7th. May 7th is the Path to the Ancestors workshop where we talk about connecting, identifying how we can identify energies that are not in alignment and work to release those and shift those and create a new narrative. It's a 3-hour interactive workshop that will be on Zoom. If you can't make it live, you can absolutely get the recording and watch it via the recording. So that's that. So May 7th, the link for that will be in the comments. But I just want to, before we leave, I think I'm going to read one of the prayers that comes out of my latest books. I think I'm going to do that. So again, just big picture, because we're getting to the time where I like for us to wrap up. Just knowing that not all wisdom needs to be carried out, and that I've given you questions that you can kind of tap in, and as you're getting information and getting connections, weigh that against those questions. And if something doesn't feel aligned, don't be afraid to dive deeper and connect deeper. All right. So with that, I'm going to read it. So if you don't know, I have a new book. I actually have two. One's a book and one is a journal. My ring light is Casting Shadow. But this is 33 Path to the Ancestors, 33 prayers, prompts, and rituals for healing and connection. So I'm going to read one of the prayers. I think that will kind of, do what we did well today, right? Because again, oftentimes what's coming up is based on what's passed down. So this prayer, if you have the book, this is page 43. It's day 12. So the book does kind of go through these themes. So we go through gratitude. I don't quite remember the themes, but they're here. Gratitude, healing, and upliftment, connection, and then moving forward. So this is day 12, which would be what, week 2? So healing and upliftment. So this particular prayer is releasing fear and generational trauma. All right, so path to the ancestors, releasing fear and generational trauma, prayer of release. Beloved ancestors, today I call forth the courage to release the energy of fear and trauma that has lingered in our lineage. I honor the ways these patterns once protected us, shielding us in times of uncertainty, guiding us through challenges, and teaching us resilience. But now I choose to let these burdens go. I release the fear that holds us back from stepping fully into love and freedom. I release the generational wounds that echo in our stories and hearts. I release the heaviness of trauma, trusting that it will be transformed into light and peace. May this act of release extend across time, bringing healing to you, my ancestors, and to every soul in our family line. May the chains of fear dissolve, replaced by the strength to face life with open hearts. May the energy of trauma be met with compassion, and may our lineage move forward in a state of balance and safety. Thank you for the lessons these experiences have taught us. Thank you for the guidance and for trusting me with this sacred work. Together, we are creating a foundation of love, trust, and harmony. Ashe, amen, and so it is. Path to the ancestors. This is day 12, releasing fear and generational trauma, prayer of release. Until next time, remember you deserve to live a life that lights you up from the inside out. Stay aligned, liberated, and abundant.